Good day. This is your Midday Talk Show with your host Nadine Hendricks. You are listening to Agape FM. What a beautiful day it is in Port Elizabeth. Before we start our Midday Talk Show, I want to give a word of encouragement. Philippians 1 verse 6 says, being confident of this, that he who started a good work in you will carry it out unto completion until the day of Christ. Being confident of this tells us Paul not only had the assurance of his own salvation, but of theirs. He has seen the Philippian church in action and believes them to be real. It were not by their own strength nor their will that they could have run this race, but by the will and the goodness of God. Paul trusted God completely, and so do we today. God started this work, and be sure he will finish it. He called you according to Romans 8 verse 13. He gave us his spirit as a deposit, says Ephesians. We will find security and assurance in the fact that it was God who saved us when we couldn't save ourselves. It was God who loved us and sent his only Son to die for us when we had no one to love. It is just past the hour of 1, the 17th of August 2022. It's a beautiful day, and we thank our Heavenly Father, for this is a day that the Lord has made. And I am not alone today in the studio. I have a very special guest today, Mr. Simon Clark of Siphon Hairdressing and Carl Real Estates. Welcome, Simon, to our Midday Talk Show. I am excited to be your host today, and I so want to hear your story. Tell me, Simon, before we start off, are there any friends and family that you would like to give a shout out to?
Hello, Nadine. I suppose I think first I'd just like to say hello to all of you listeners, because without them we wouldn't be here, and I have to say hello to my fiancée Monique, because without her I wouldn't be here. And I don't know, there are just so many people out there. To pick out a few, I think basically hello to everyone. As you said, it's a beautiful day outside, and let's just make the most of it.
Yeah, let's make the most of it, eh? Well, Simon, I'm just going to read your bio quickly so our listeners can know who is Simon.
Okay.
Simon is born in Port Elizabeth, educated in PE, matriculating at Mere in 1994. He spent a few years in Scotland before returning to PE to study pharmacy. During this time, he founded a marketing company, Silent Partner, that conceptualized and started the Kansas Shave-a-thon. From there, he studied hairdressing, qualifying at Image One. So Simon founded his own salon, Siphon Hairdressing, and has won several awards and traveled to perform hairdressing education for both Wella and Swartkoft. He has also been privileged to train and to be on call for the list for hairdressing call list for New York, for Paris, Johannesburg, and Cape Town fashion shows, and to work backstage there with some amazing international hairdressing. During COVID, Simon teamed up with Clinic Care to begin their rollout of a salon shop by Simon Clark at Clinic Care. And he is currently also expanding into real estate with great success. You're quite a traveler, Simon. New York. Tell us, man, who is Simon Clark?
Well, after that, what's there for me to fill in? I always like to say when people ask me that, well, I'm just me. And I've always been someone who... Facebook came up with the slogan, move fast and break things. Well, I don't think, as my friends will say, I'm not an especially fast mover. I'm usually the one running along at the back of the pack. But I do like doing things. And if there's an opportunity to do something, I always want to be part of it, because life's too short. We have to jump in there and have fun and do things. And when we're doing them, and that's me, let's do it. And that's who I am. I like doing stuff.
You like doing stuff. Tell me, how did you start your business, Simon, and what inspired you to go into it?
Hold on. Well, okay. We're talking about starting businesses, my very, very, very first business was way back in about 1986 or 87 when I was still at primary school. And my dad used to collect woodworking tools. So every Saturday and Sunday, I'd be dragged around to car boot sales while he'd go and look at them. And do you remember the telephone wire with all the pretty colors? There was a craze at my school for making bangles with it. And just as this started, I was at a car boot sale and the gentleman had a sack of it for sale. And I remember buying the whole sack for R2. And then I started packaging it and selling it to all the kids in my class. And before long, I was selling it to the whole school and the school next door. And so I suppose I've always been a businessman at heart. But hairdressing is what I'm best known for in Port Elizabeth. And if we're talking about hair salons, my very first hair salon, I remember once I'd finished college, I was sitting at home and going, well, I've got a qualification. I need a hair salon, but I can't really afford one. So my poor father, I looked and I decided the dining room could work as a hair salon. So I pushed the dining room table out the way. I stuck a mirror on the wall. I made my own hairdressing basin out of a few bits of scrap wood and some scrap canvas. And I bought a few tubes of color and I literally made some pamphlets and advertised. And that was all done with 500 Rand. And that's where the business, my whole hairdressing business grew from 500 Rand. I was saying earlier, we started with 10 tubes of color. I now stock 100 different colors at any one time. It's just phenomenal and basically just comes down to a bit of hard work and get out there and have fun. Just do it. I have to tell the formative story once. This has really deeply influenced me. My best friend's dad is an amazing businessman. And I remember it was on my 14th birthday, which was the day the United States invaded Iraq for the first time. I can still remember we were at his holiday house watching the tanks roll into Iraq. And later on that day, we're sitting out on the deck with his dad. And of course, little 14-year-olds, we're like, come on, tell us. How'd you get rich? How'd you make $1 million? And we were expecting this whole long answer. And he said, actually, no, it's really easy. The difference between the people who are successful and the people who aren't is actually very small. The people who are successful don't talk about it. They do it. And that stuck with me. I suppose I just do things.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it stuck with you, eh?
Yes.
It stuck with you. It's amazing, Simon. My mother was diagnosed with cancer a couple of years back. And I want you to tell your story about the cancer shave-a-thon.
Right. Shave-a-thon started while I was at varsity because when I came back, I originally like to, if I'm wanting to cause trouble, I'd always tell people I came back to Port Elizabeth to study drugs. So that was me. I was studying pharmacy, and while I was doing that, I started a marketing company. And we did a lot of work for a lot of companies. I represented Clover and Estelle and Pick and Pay. We did work for Unilever, which was washing powders and all the rest. And in amongst this, the internet was then also starting, we were really starting to surf the internet. And my fiancée will tell you, I read the news. If she wants to find me when I've got spare time, I'm sitting reading international newspapers, looking to see what's happening. And I saw an article about the world's greatest shave for a cure, which was the Australian version of Shave-a-thon. And I looked at this and I thought, South Africans, Australians, we both love rugby. We're both crazy. What can go wrong? This has to work here. So,
what can go wrong?
So I went to the Cancer Association and I said, anything the Australians can do, we can do better. I mean, we've won the Rugby World Cup more times than them. So, and the Cancer Association weren't convinced. So I persuaded them, as I said, I'm like, just do it. So I was like, we're going to make it happen. So the very first Shave-a-thon happened in 2002. And I didn't sleep for 48 hours because, obviously know the concept about the shaving hair and spraying, and the original ones, Nedbank was one of our sponsors, and we were spraying people's hair green and all the rest. But what many people don't know is that we had to, back then, colored hairspray wasn't a thing. So we had to import professional colored hairspray. What many people don't know is the hairspray got lost by South African Airways, and it was sitting on the runway at OR Tambo. So I was having panic phone calls trying to find where this big crate of hairspray had gone to. And eventually we got it solved. It arrived in time. The shave-a-thon started at 8 o'clock on the Friday morning, if memory serves me right. The hairspray landed in Port Elizabeth on 2 o'clock of that morning. And from there, we had to get it to 50 venues from East London to Cape St. Francis and Queenstown before 8 o'clock that morning. We ran around, but we made it work, and the event worked. It was a phenomenal success.
And it's still running.
It's still running. I'm not involved in it anymore, but it's still running, and it's still got potential.
Sure. Because I have a friend every year, all her hair's got all this colors.
Yes.
Simon, you've won quite a few of awards.
Yes.
And traveled to perform hairdressing education. How was that experience?
It's exhilarating and exhausting. And I'll never forget the one story I love was one about I was invited to help at a hair show in Durban. And the way it worked is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, got in an airplane. I lie. We landed in Durban at 2 o'clock, drove straight to the studio, worked until 5:30 preparing everything for the show. Straight to the hotel, shower change, up to the venue, you do the event finished at 10:30. You're then expected to socialize with the guests. So in the end, I think we got back to the hotel once we finished tidying up and all the rest afterwards at about 2 in the morning. 4 o'clock in the morning, you have to get up to fly back to Port Elizabeth. And as it happened, then I had this salon in Summerstrand then, and I lived around the corner. I didn't have any clients, but I thought, let me pick up all the paperwork, and I can do a bit of admin when I've had a nap in the evening. And so the next morning, I go into the salon, and one of my staff goes to me, "Jeepers, Simon, you were so grumpy when you got home. You came into the salon yesterday. You just had this beautiful day traveling. Why could you be so grumpy?" And I was, "Warren, I'd basically been working non-stop, had no sleep."
Sure.
And that's, a lot of people see the glitz and the glam of what goes on at the front of a fashion week. They don't realize that at the back, you're starting in the morning, you're doing all the prep, and then you've got this huge amount of stress, because quite often, with especially things like the Joburg and Cape Town fashion weeks, are called capsule shows. So what that means is you'll have 10 designers all doing their show in the same night. Now, you have a relatively fixed pool of models, so you'll have some models will be doing 5, 6, 7 shows that night. But every designer wants that model to look different. But so you have to change that model's hair literally in the time it takes them to change their clothes.
Sure. Yeah.
And quite often you're doing it while they're changing their clothes. So it's high pressure, high stress, but immensely rewarding. I suppose I've been very privileged to do it. I've had a naughty story, but I love this one. I remember when I started studying hairdressing, friends asked me, implied that I was going to be gay. And I looked at him and I said, "Clinton, I spend every day working with beautiful women. Why would one ever think a hairdresser would want to be gay?"
But there's the thing, Simon, when you look at a hairdresser, a male one, and you think, sure, he must be.
Why?
But
if I think of all the, and I've worked with a lot of top international hairdressers, almost all of them are straight. It's So anyway, we're not here to talk about that, but it's...
But you can do when you sleep. Tell me, Simon, COVID had a few challenges also. What happened in your business?
COVID still is a challenge. COVID is interesting, and as I said to you earlier, and we can't really... I've just come from a talk with Nedbank's chief economist, which was really, really interesting. And she says there's hope for us. She thinks we are going to be... we're on the track to recovery from COVID. But if I looked at COVID, the hard lockdown in COVID was one of my most successful periods in business ever. And I suppose this comes back to what I said earlier about my philosophy of, if there's something, I'm just going to try it. And I realized nobody could see a hairdresser, but there are lots of women for whom grey hair is a real issue.
Don't go there.
So I started selling hair color direct to the public. And that also was incredibly stressful for me, because a lot of hairdressers accused me of trying to kill the hairdressing business, because it's not... a lot of them say we shouldn't sell hair color to the public. And my response to that is, well, I've got news for you. People have been buying it for pick and pay since before I was born. They still come to a professional hairdresser. Why is that going to change now? And in that sense, as you said earlier, I travel a lot. There's an Australian brand called Fudge, has had a professional hair color range for sale direct to the public for years. In fact, since before I qualified, and that's 20 years ago. And if you travel overseas, if you're walking around in Berlin, there are shops in the shopping centers where you can walk in and buy professional products straight off the shelf, direct to the public. And I always say, why are we why do you think we should be different here? Let's do what everyone else does.
And we don't want to be different sometimes. Listen, you are quite a traveler. I hear about Berlin now.
Yeah.
Any other traveling plans?
I have to be honest, there will be a trip to Scotland in December, but that's going to be more to visit my family. Possibly to look at one or two property possibilities there that we are investigating. It was very interesting. I was there recently for my brother's wedding, and we spent a bit of time traveling around and obviously looking at real estate options there. And it's quite interesting to see how COVID has affected the property market there, just like here. And same story, slightly different outcome. But the thing that, and as I said also at the function this morning, talking to other professionals in town, and we're saying people either have a positive outlook or a negative one. And my feeling is there is always a positive outlook to something. My grandmother used to tell me, it's an ill wind that doesn't blow somebody a little bit of good. And I always think, even in tragedy, if you can always find something positive to take hold of and grow. It's, if you want a really simple example, the water crisis now has created a whole lot of companies that are now helping with rainwater harvesting and recycling, and people are getting better at recycling their own water. And that can only be good for everyone going forward.
Simon, talking about water, I catch my own rainwater.
So do we.
Listen, looking over the past years, are there any highlights or lowlights in business? Anyone?
Highlights would be my success in Weller's International Trend Vision Competition. It would be working on the fashion weeks. That sticks in my mind. There are some really, really, really good times there. Where else? I suppose if we wanted to, my very first property sale, that was a year ago, but we're going from strength to strength from there. And I think actually, to me, every day is a highlight in a way. There's always something good that you can take away from each day and say, I got this done, or I did that, or even if it's just having a walk with your dogs and just quiet time, you can always find something positive.
Always something good in a day. I wanted to ask you now about the real estate. How is that going?
It's going fantastically. I love it. It's in some ways an extension of hairdressing in that I'm getting to meet people and work with people and all the rest. But it's also, I find, very much an outlet for my scientific mind. As I said, I studied pharmacy before, drugs. But as part of that, you do biological statistics. And during lockdown, as much as I had the hair color company going and all the rest, I also did a course in medical statistics through UCT because obviously you couldn't go out and socialize, had the time. So I thought, well, medical statistics have always interested me. So I did another course in that. And then funnily enough, real estate, there's actually a lot of statistical analysis that goes on in the background. So you can analyze which houses are worth buying. And I've done very well buying and selling houses in the past because I get the maths right in advance and I can see this house is going to give me the best growth if I buy it at this price. So I'm loving transferring those, basically taking those skills and then applying them in the real estate industry. And it's fantastic.
It's fantastic. It's good, man. It's good. Tell me, Simon, if I want to buy a house now,
Okay.
how do I get in contact with you?
Well, the easiest way is to phone me on 072 13 00 475. Or you can find me on Facebook. I'm Simon David Alexander Clark or Simon Clark. I've got each page. Those are perhaps the easiest ways. WhatsApp is always amazing. It's the same number. And because the nice thing about WhatsApp, I'm quite often in meetings and things. So if somebody WhatsApps me, it's very easy for me to have a, you can still listen and you can quietly tap away. But it means you can keep in touch and you can keep the conversation going. And it also means I'm always available if there's something urgent. And so WhatsApp's probably the best.
The best way,
Yeah.
yes. Simon, I'm encouraged today by you. But I know there's someone out there who would like to do a word of encouragement to anyone.
It is really easy. Never be afraid, and never be afraid to start small. Just, I talked about myself who started with 500 Rand. If you think about Facebook, which started in a dormitory. If you look at Apple, started in somebody's garage. Seem to remember Microsoft started in a very similar way. If you look at a lot of the big successful companies, and not just that, I'm very certain if you go and talk to a lot of the very successful small businesses in Port Elizabeth, you will find they didn't get where they did by starting big. They started like an apple tree as a seed, and it grew and it grew. So my advice is, never be afraid to try and never be afraid to fail. I've failed plenty times.
And you're still here.
I'm still here. You dust yourself off and you try again.
You get up.
And somebody once taught me, fail is a good word because fail stands for first attempt in learning.
First attempt in learning.
Yes. So it's not a bad word. Failure isn't bad. Just keep going and you will be successful.
Simon, thank you so much for making this time.
Thank you,
to
Nadine.
share your story with
It's
all of us.
an absolute pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been wonderful.
It was wonderful. Simon, may God bless you. May He bless the work of your hands. For I know and I praise grace and His favor and His blessings to find you. And remember, whatever He started in you, He will surely complete it.
Thank you.
And now, listeners, thank you for tuning into Agape FM Radio. Hope you were all blessed today by our guest, Mr. Simon Clark, on our Midday Talk Show. Would you like to be interviewed? Tell your story. Please do WhatsApp us on 069 402 1132. We will be waiting for your call. And remember to tune in on the next Midday Talk Show. You don't want to miss it. Doors are opening in the name of